bird on a tree. I'm just sitting here. I got time. It's clear to see from up here.
Hi, everyone. This is Monica Ramirez, Warrior of Love, and you're in Soul Talk. And today we have a very special invite. It's a friend of mine that I feel like I knew her from a past life. And her name is Nancy Agnes. She's in Canada. And I really thank you for being here in Soul Talk, Nancy.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here, Monica. I really appreciate it. It was such a pleasure to talk to you last time. I'm excited to talk to you again today.
Yes, it is great to have you again here with us. And I wanted to, well, can you tell us a little bit more of who you are and so forth, so like that people that not saw you the first time, they know you this.
Sure. Sure. So my name's Nancy, and I kind of walk in two worlds. I have um, a career where I'm an assistant principal at a school, like in a big jurisdiction school system. I'm a mom of 4 kids, 2 I gave birth to, 2 I took in. And then the other side of myself is the spiritual side, where I do what I call soul telepathy. So I've been given the gift of being an empath, where I'm able to hear what your soul is trying to tell you in order for your own growth and evolution. So I do readings and whatnot with that as well. And then I recently branched in, probably a little bit of inspiration there from you, Monica, as well, is I'm now selling my art. I've been making it just as gifts for people and whatnot, and now I've started going public with that too. So I wear lots of hats.
That's, I believe part of channeling is all the arts are included, not only writing, it's also painting and creating, doing sculpture and dancing and singing. All that is part of our mission and part of channeling, because we are transmitting our messages through art. So I believe that's
Yeah, when you're in that flow, it doesn't matter what the flow is, right? It's that connection, and then that output, the input and output, right?
yes. Nancy, I wanted to talk to you today and to our listeners to about sisterhood,
Mm,
that I believe that is a very important theme that is being touching more and more, and I believe to the hearts of everybody, in the females, obviously, because we're talking about sisterhood in the world, and what it means for you being have a sisterhood or sisterhood in general.
It's so interesting, Monica, because I was actually just talking to my partner about this the other day, and how so many women, when they're younger, I know myself, I didn't have a lot of female friends because I felt that, women were sort of catty and negative, or they were superficial or whatnot. And so most of my friends growing up were males. Well, now the tables have turned, and I actually have such a beautiful community of women that I feel so supported by and encouraged by and inspired by, and we all connect, lift each other up, support each other. And it really creates this network of vibrational energy and this network of connection, and so I'd love to understand, what's the shift? Why do I feel that so much now compared to when I was younger? And then how can we encourage younger women to embrace that sisterhood and embrace that, like, how can we encourage that sense of lifting as opposed to competition, because I can honestly say, with my sisterhood now, and it's funny because I had my 50th birthday last year. Actually, I guess it was almost 2 years now. But I had my 50th birthday, and I realized, like, a friend of mine planned, it was during COVID, and the regulations were you're only allowed to have 10 people. So we decided to just have a party of the special women in my life. And so she invited, 10. It was hard to narrow it down to the 10 special women in my life. And as I'm sitting around, I realized that almost none of them knew each other. They were all amazing women that I connect with here, 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 here. but almost there, I think only two of them knew each other. And it was just such a powerful gathering. And I remember thinking like, why doesn't this happen more often, that we, kind of unite in that space, of being.
I believe that when we were younger, I'm your age, so we're young. uh, but when we were younger, there was more competition and so forth, and those kind of things, and there was more envy and those and such those things. And come on, as a women, we can recognize that when we were not, maybe not us, but we observe it in other people, that there was always, because there was that competition, that energy, they were trying to bring you down because they were trying to raise themselves up. So it was very hard to trust women. That's why it was easier to have male friends, because they were not in the same game.
Whereas now I find with my female friends, with my, like you said, sisterhood, like, especially like I just had surgery, and, even the surgery itself happened because a friend of mine called me in the summer and said, Nancy, I just had a dream that they told me to tell you, to warn you to get your left ovary checked. And just as I'm talking to her on the phone, I'm feeling some pain on my left side. And I was like, okay, I probably would have just chalked it up to menstrual cramps or being like close to menopause or whatever. But because she had that dream, because she reached out to me, I went and I got things checked. And sure enough, it was like, yeah, there's some stuff that has to be dealt with, and everything got expedited. So, even just her like thinking, instead of, having that dream and going, oh, that was weird. She took the time to call me and said, this may sound weird. Well, to me, nothing sounds weird, but, and as a result, this all kind of unfolded. So, and even just since my surgery, I've had so many of my friends, and even people that this is actually another interesting part, even people that I don't really know that well, who found out the kind of surgery I had, have been reaching out to me going, oh, I had that, or my mom had that, or my sister had that. And, and this is some things that they found. And it was this instant sort of community that came. And it reminded me a little bit of the first time I felt that was after I had a baby. And after my daughter was born, I all of a sudden felt connected to all the women that had ever given birth ever before that or ever will. And I kind of felt this connection to this womanhood, and now it's beyond, mothers, it's all women, right? And that sisterhood. So yeah, I definitely feel it, especially now, even since my surgery. So
maybe it's because when you're in that moment that it touches our femininity, it is no competition. It is having that compassion. And when we are younger, we have a different kind of mentality. And now we can observe life in a very different way. Like we already have the experience of life. We've been beaten, we've been passed through many, many things, that we have actually now more compassion, or because when we see another woman suffering from any of problem that they can have in physical, mental, spiritual, in any way.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, because I think we start to, I don't know if it's age or experience or whatnot, but actually, I think it would be experience, because as you experience things, especially hardship, right?
Yes.
As you experience hardship, you start to build that empathy. And so then you can empathize with other women for, what they've gone through, what they've experienced. And it might not be exactly like yours, but you can empathize with some of those feelings. And I think it changes, like you said, from that sort of competition of bringing each other down or using someone's, insecurities or pains to break down. And instead it's that, how can I support, right? And I think the more experiences you have, the more, at least, I don't know, maybe not everybody is like that. Maybe it's, maybe there's certain people that are like that, but I find the more experiences I have, the more, especially struggles that I've had, the more empathy I develop. Because even in this situation, as I'm feeling more helpless than I've been in a long time, until I can fully recover. I can't drive, I can't lift anything, I can't, and I was thinking how grateful I am that I'm in a situation where I am supported right now, because in different times in my life, I wouldn't have been. And in different times in my life, this would have been very, very, very difficult. And then I thought about all the women out there who may have gone through something similar that don't have supports and have to try and do it by themselves, and I started feeling that empathy for, people in different situations. And I think the more we go through, the more we experience, the more we develop empathy and are able to relate to our sisters as opposed to viewing it as competition. And I also think things are changing. Maybe I'm naive, but I kind of feel that whole patriarchal society of like, you're only like the whole Bridgerton thing, you're only worth what your husband's worth, or if you're married or if you have kids, then you're worth something. That's all going by the wayside. As a woman, you can be single, you can be married, you can have kids, you can not have kids, and you're still just as much of a woman. There's no value. I mean, there still is in societal context, but that's going away. And so I think as that goes away, that competition for, used to be at one point that, if you could marry into something, that's how you got anything. So there was competition, whereas now women are making it for themselves. So I think the competition it's not as important anymore,
And I'm glad that you touched that point, because yes, I can see that changing. I want to think that the new generations are going to have less of leftovers of trauma than we got. I really want to
Hopefully.
see that. Because yes, I can see in even the old generations, the mother competing with the daughters.
Yes.
And that was very, very destructive. That's something that we still have to clean and clear for our future generations. But that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that we don't pass through that. And
No, it's true.
yes,
I think there's also that sort of independence that has to happen too. Like I know I went through it with my mom. When I look back on that time, I'm kind of embarrassed at like how terrible I was to my mom. But there's that sort of time where I think young women almost have to like kind of assert themselves as like independent from their mothers, and it kind of goes through that phase, and hopefully it can be done in a respectful way. But I think everyone goes through it to some degree. I know
yes.
I did. Sorry, Mom.
I know that there's also, yes, nothing is personal. Please. We're talking in general. And it's just about the base of the clients that I have, the base of the clients. Well, I did pass through that. My mother was very envious of all her daughters and granddaughters, not the male ones, only the females. There was that kind of competition with my mother. And I saw that in generations and generations, it was the same thing. And now I want to think that now the females, adults, at least in my family, we're working with ourselves. So we don't pass that to our daughters and later on granddaughters and so on. So because that's how it was transmitted to my ancestors, females.
Yeah. And I think there's an awareness now, whereas like, I think at one point it was survival, you had to, acquire a certain amount of, land or wealth or whatever, just to survive, whereas now there's a lot more choice. Women now are allowed to, follow your dreams. It's a lot more of a choose your own adventure. It used to be, even not that long ago, my generation, is I think the sort of first generation where, gone are the days of you go to school, you get a career, you stay in that career, you retire, or whatever, like, or you go to school, you get married, you stay at home with your kids, and then, whereas now it's, yeah, you can have kids and then run a side business and then do consulting and then la la la, there's so many different things. Or you can start in one career, and they say that the average, I think it's actually higher than that now, but the average career change for a person now is between 6 and 7 careers in a lifetime, which at one point that would have been unheard of. And so I think as women, there's still some inequity, definitely. I'm not going to, whitewash that, but there's a lot more opportunity than there was. So I think as a result, you know, scarcity breeds that competition. Scarcity breeds that sort of take mentality. You know, scarcity breeds the fear that leads to that competition. You know, the mother-daughter, I want to make sure my daughters have, you know, as much as I did or whatever, or they live up to my expectations, which may be perhaps not realistic, you know. And so I think you know, now that there, I mean, there's still scarcity in different areas, but there's more opportunity. And so I think that feeling of fear is maybe starting to minimize a little, which is allowing for that sisterhood. I also think on an energetic level, and I'm sure you feel this too, is that we're being called to gather. You know, that actually happened the other day. I had my first market booth, and all these amazing women that had different stalls around, you know, where I was, all came up to me, and they're all like healers and spiritual workers and stuff. And they're all talking to me. And then the one said, we're being called to gather. So we're finding each other. Right. And I just thought, you know what, you're right. Like the earth is hurting as a human species, as humanity, we're hurting. And you know, the mothers, the sisters, the goddesses are being called to gather in order to heal, to nurture. And the more, actually, I'm getting tons of energy as I'm saying this. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm getting like goosebumps and stuff. And it's like we're being called to gather so that we can heal and nurture instead of tear down. It's about putting together, building together. And so we're being called as women to unite and to gather and to heal, right? To nurture each other.
Yes, definitely. There's a lot of things that we have to heal as females living in this patriarch society. It is,
Mhm.
I am Mexican, so we have a very strict culture for females.
Right.
And that was a tough one. And I can still see it with many of my friends that some of them are awake, some of them they're not living in Mexico. And the ones that are not awake, they're having a hard time because they still in the program.
And they're probably feeling it. And so there's a discord, right?
Yes, because those are the ones more judgmental to others. Women will go to the old patterns, to the old world, and the
Mhm.
competition and the envy and so on. So why? Because they are following the pattern, they're following the programs of the
The
society.
program. Yeah, the program, you know, and it's hard when it's encultured, when you are just immersed in it, you know. And I mean, it's easy to say, but you know, even like lots of times when I do readings, right, for people, what sometimes comes up in the throat chakra is how we talk to ourselves, right? And how, what kinds of words we say. And often what comes out is I'll ask people to kind of, as they're saying certain things to themselves, ask, whose voice is this? Where does this come from? You know. And sometimes it's identifiable, it's a mother, it's a sister, it's a whatever, but sometimes it's a societal voice, you know. And I've had so many friends recently who are choosing not to have children, that are feeling this pressure that somehow that they're not fulfilling an expectation if they don't have children, yet they're not feeling called to have children. And I keep saying, like, I love my children, but having children is a big thing, and it's not for everybody. And if that's not what you're called to do, then there's nothing less about you as a woman if you choose not to have children. But there is that societal voice still. And so I think we have to really tease out sometimes, whose voices are those? You know, is it really our soul saying this is what we want? Because if it is, then we can look at that differently. Or is it other voices, you know? And so as we're speaking to ourselves, we need to be aware, right?
I totally agree with you because yes, it is very true. The pattern was, all the females were born to basically, in the old times, it was just to serve the man. And that
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't have to even, we were, it was prohibited to actually to we go to college or have any kind of studies.
Mm-hmm.
Even I believe in the 40s or 50s in the United States, that's when the women could have a credit card. And before they couldn't even have properties in their name or both.
Right.
Like,
Well, and that's the thing you had, and I think that's what bred that sense of competition, was
mhm,
that you couldn't have anything unless you're married. You know, it's interesting because when I first started doing the work that I'm doing and working with my mentor, she introduced me to Madame Blavatsky. And I don't know if you know who that is, but
yes.
she's, you know, kind of the mother of theosophy and different things. But, you know, she basically got married just so that she was no longer a single woman, and she traveled the world, but she was able to do so because she was married. So without, you know, like without those rules, like you couldn't do anything. And so you had to find your situation that allowed you to have any sense of freedom or any sense of, experiences or adventure. And so I think that bred that competition. Whereas now, women are more and more empowered to do it, that the rules are becoming less. They're still there. They're still there, we're still fighting against them, but there is less, which I think is allowing us to develop that sisterhood and those bonds, as opposed to, and that said, I wonder sometimes culturally, there are some cultures that do seem to have these strong women bonds, where they like, it takes a village to raise a child kind of thing. And there's this strong bonding whereas here where I live, there's a lot of isolation. You're kind of on your own and then you're weak if you ask for help. Right. And so there's some things that need to change.
It's exactly the contrary where I come from. Is you're required to ask for help, even if you don't need it, because or else, how dare you? You're not gonna ask for help. Who do you think you are? It is very different.
Interesting. Whereas here, you're weak if you ask for help, and you should be able to do everything all by yourself, and that's really not the way it is,
It is a game. And basically, both of them are games because you ask for help because that's what you're supposed to ask. Then
Right.
you're gonna be crucified because you ask for help because, of course, you don't know how to do it. Like I asked because I was supposed to ask. Yes, but no, you should not. You should ask, but not ask. It was so confusing before.
That makes me think of, like, I've seen a couple of people's posts lately where it's like, as a woman, you're supposed to be this, but not this, and you're supposed to be this, but not this. And it's all these contradicting things that it's almost impossible. Like you can't be everything, And so I think at some point, and maybe this comes with age, Monica, we're the similar age, but at some point you stop caring about all those different rules and all the different, you're supposed to be this, you're supposed to be that. And you start just being yourself and figuring out what yourself even is. Because I think, as a young woman, you're still kind of figuring that out. And that's where that competition comes in sometimes. And that's where that kind of one up kind of comes in, or, I'd like to think I wasn't like that, but I'm sure I was, whereas now it's kind of to each your own, like, be who you are, be what you want to be. And, I think we're evolving a little bit that way, or maybe it's just as I get older, it doesn't matter to me as much.
I believe that brought a lot of because I was thinking right now in the Maya time, when the Mayas were more strong, there was it was more a matriarch society more than a patriarch society. And when the women got to the 52 years old, they changed to a different cycle in the same calendar, and that's when they become the respected grandmothers, even if they didn't have kids. But it was a title that it was given to them because now they were the wise women, the ones that people went to ask for advice and so forth. And it was respected and it was seen for the entire society that it was there in a very different way. Now, in these days, of course, we don't see that much, and we don't put that, even if we have the knowledge and the experience for all the mistakes that we have done when we were younger. And now we can say, oh, I would not do that again. I don't advise you to do that because why I did it 2 or 3 times.
Do as I say, not as I did, right? No, for sure. And it's interesting because you mentioned that, like, for me, it was a couple years ago, I started to feel this, I don't know, I described it as turning inside out, and I wondered if that was like perimenopausal or what was going on. But I felt this sense of turning inside. But then as I was turning inside, I was also turning out. Like it was almost like I was like just completely shifting. And I kept feeling this sort of energetic feeling of sort of turning inside out. And I think it's almost like what happened was who I was on the inside has now started to radiate outward as this is just who I am all the time now. And so
Yeah.
it was this turning inside out. And I remember clearly having those feelings. And I remember thinking, and I think I even had some dreams about it in terms of the crone, right? And turning into the crone. And even though, I don't want to identify with the crone, but at the same time, like you said, that there's a certain age where you develop that wisdom, and then it's your job to be a knowledge keeper, someone with wisdom, someone not giving my opinion where it's not wanted, but at the same time, I've been places, I've done things, and I maybe have a little bit of wisdom that I can impart, and also learn from our elders. We don't nearly connect with our elders anymore as much, at least in my where I am. We don't have that connection to our elders nearly to the degree that I think we should.
When we get to this age, at the same time, the judgments of others does not affect us as much as when we were younger.
Mm-mm.
Like, I really do not care. I come to understand completely that we all one at the same time. We're all one. And whatever other people I am reflecting to them is something that they have to work for themselves.
Absolutely.
And the same vice versa. If something is making me react, I understand that they're just bringing something that I was needing to work with myself. That doesn't have to do anything with that person that is making me react. And the work is mine. And that also brings us the liberty to be completely us because we don't care.
Right. And then as a result, we become more and more authentic, which I think also develops that sisterhood. And I was looking I was having a conversation the other day, and we were talking about something, it was something on the media or news or something. And it was something going on. And I just thought, not a single person that I associate with would ever behave that way. Like it just, like I started kind of taking stock of who are my friends, who is my sisterhood. And every single person that I consider my friend, I have so much respect for and are such respected, amazing people. It doesn't mean they're perfect. We all have our, flaws and our idiosyncrasies and whatnot, but they're all people that are walking this earth to try to make the world a better place. So my advice is, if you find yourself surrounded in situations that feel toxic or feel like they bring out the worst in you,
Mhm.
then look around at who you're spending your time with,
Yeah.
and if those people aren't capable of growth at this point in time, find the people that you resonate with. I often tell young girls, that are having lots of girl problems, I'm like, it gets easier. Eventually you find your people, and I think now, like I look at the people that are in my circle, and they're all people that vibrate at a, higher level, higher frequency. And I feel so blessed. I feel so blessed. And I also find that I'm attracting new people like that, so I'll meet like you, I just met you not that long ago, and there's that resonance, and different people you kind of just connect with and resonate with because you're on. So when you become more aware of yourself and the energy that you're putting out and who you are, you start to attract those people. So, young women or any women that are, feeling like they're not inspired by the people that they're spending time with, you know, branch out a little bit and see, what does inspire you, because that resonating elevates, right?
I remember when we're putting boundaries and the people that are not used to our boundaries because we never
Mm,
had it before, of course, they're not gonna like our boundaries.
mm-mm.
They are gonna try to do whatever to bring down those boundaries. So we need to honor ourselves, even in those moments. And you have to let go people that they were dearly for you. I have let go people that they were dearly for me, but they were not
Mhm.
respecting those boundaries.
Yeah. And that's really important, to recognize. And I found, actually, it was one of my mentors, one of my teachers, because boundaries is definitely something that I struggle with sometimes, and setting boundaries and having expectations, right? Like I tend to because I can accommodate, I do, as opposed to kind of setting boundaries and saying, no, this is what I expect. But I found I've been using the term sometimes, I can't make that work right now. And so I don't have to tell them why. It might just be that I don't feel like it. It might just be that I'm tired. It might just be, but by saying I just can't make that work right now. The first time I started using that, I was amazed at how nobody questioned. It was like, oh, okay, and I realized what amazing people I have around me, that when I said, I can't make that work right now, they were like, okay, no problem. Maybe we can do another time, or and I didn't have to tell them why. I didn't have to make an excuse. I didn't have to feel guilty. I just couldn't make it work. And then, there's certain situations where, people might have different reactions. And I realize, you know what, those are not the people that I need to be around, and it's about acceptance, right? You get to know your sisters, and who needs what. Oh, this person needs a bit more compliments or ego stroking, so I'll make sure to do that. And this person needs to have someone checking in, and so you kind of get to know what people need, and then you can create that community, right?
And do you think that the young generations, females, because we're talking again of sisterhood, that's why not, I'm not
Mhm.
adding, it's not that I'm excluding guys, it's just we're talking about sisterhood.
Yes, there's a brotherhood too, and a familyhood, but this one's about sisterhood. I got it. Yeah.
And but do you think the young generations that are, I don't know, in their 20s, 30s, I see them struggling with this sisterhood because they still in that competition, in that
You know,
with
I
those
think
programs. How do we help them out? Or
I think there's a lot of factors there. I think one is that at one point in time, before internet, before cell phones, whatnot, the only way to have an experience was to go and have an experience. So you had to go out and have an experience. Whereas now you can have all the experiences from the comfort. I mean, here we are talking, I'm in Canada, you're there. We're like, so you can have these experiences without leaving, without actually connecting. And I think some of the art of genuine connection has been lost a little bit. That's one factor. And I think the other factor is that, again, like, I'm not down on social media because it's a great tool, it's a great platform, it's a great way to connect. But especially women who have this innate sense of competition, we see the top of the top, right? So we see, like, even if you ever scroll like TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, you see women in their like absolute perfection. They've done their makeup, they've done it, and so you don't see so it's very hard to feel like you compare, because we see the top of the top, but we don't, they're only that top in that one picture, in that one photo, in that one moment, and in the rest of their lives, it might be a complete mess. But we're constantly inundated, and especially young people are constantly inundated with these images of perfection, whatever that might be, whether it's like super skilled at this or super skilled at, or maybe beautiful, whatever, but they're constantly inundated, where it's very difficult to feel that sense. There's no such thing as ordinary and average anymore. Everything that we're shown is that excellence. And so average doesn't really exist, so it's very hard as an average, to connect and to be that. And so it's easier just to hide and you know be by yourself than to jump in, right?
oh, if we see even the technology, it goes
Mhm.
with the same competition and the same comparison with the filters.
Yes. Yeah.
This has been the very funny things that we have all seen in social media with the filters, when filters go wrong.
Yes. I myself played with the Marilyn Monroe filter the other day and laughed my head off. It was so funny. Yeah. But it's not real, right? So I think people feel, and I think as a young woman, you're naturally almost insecure, right? Like it's a cultural thing. Maybe it's a female thing. I don't even know. But when you couple that with this sense of you've got to be this perfection, plus this sort of lack of connection, right? It's very hard to find that sisterhood. And I think that's where women, maybe older women, maybe that's where the crone comes in. That's where that, like you said, the 52 and up, the grandmothers, maybe that's where we need to create gathering spaces. We need to create some healthy gatherings. We need to create some healthy experiences for these young women to connect in an authentic way where they don't have to be, at the club all dressed up, but like a way that we can, maybe in nature, but like a way for young women to genuinely create those connections, to create those opportunities for sisterhood. I think that's a great idea. I think we should do that.
Really, we should, because at the same time, what is it? Let's get it deeper in there. If we remember when we were younger, and I believe it's the same thing that is applying right now that when we were in our 20s or 30s. It was you go to a club or something like that. It's like a meat market. I used to even call it meat markets. And for what reason? To bring the attention of the boys of in that time when they were not even men, they were just boys. And to someone to make you feel pretty because you did not feel pretty enough. You were not honoring yourself and you did not like yourself because you were trying and comparing yourself all the time with everybody else.
It's that
So
comparison, that's the worst part.
yes.
Yeah.
So that's
So
what it is when
finding,
people get lost. Women get
yeah, so finding authentic ways for young women, older women, middle-aged women to connect in a situation where that comparative element is out of it. As you were talking, it made me think of when I was in high school, right? Or junior high, let's say. So that's for me, like grade 9. So I would have been like, what, 12 years old, 13 years old. And I remember I've always been a bigger girl. Like I was never fat, but I was always a bigger girl. And I was very healthy. I was very strong. But that was the time of like, who was the superstars at the time? Kate Moss, like these tiny. And so that was in fact, we were watching videos from the 80s the other day, and I was just like, holy cow, that was what was popular, was the smaller the better. And I don't disparage, small women, big women, we're all women, right? But at the time I wanted to wear certain clothes, but because my friends looked better in those clothes than I did, because they were designed for that kind of body versus mine, I took a complete turn and decided to dress in the most avant-garde so that, and I was like very creative with my clothing, much to my mother's worry. I was very creative, but I think I did it so that I couldn't be compared, because I didn't feel like my body measured up to what they looked like. So if I just made it so that I couldn't be compared, it was apples to oranges, but as a result, I may have alienated myself from certain situations that I could have, probably had some good experiences in. And so I think, we need to, I think younger women are a bit better now in that, we're aware of body shaming. We're aware that women have different shapes and sizes. And I think we're more open to that to some degree. We have a ways to go.
I believe also the approach that you took then, it was actually way better than mine. Mine, I was still comparing myself. I was trying to compete. I was comparing myself with everybody else because I was in the magazines, Cyndi Lauper, etc., etc. I even dressed like Cyndi Lauper for a while, and I was the punk little girl. It's from the 80s. But the originality, being original, got lost because you were just copying. You just were copy and paste basically of everybody or whatever pop artist was in that time in the 80s. So you lost that part. And now that because you were caring too much what other people will say, not the parents, because we're teenagers or in their 20s, we're still against the parents in that time. But but you wanted your friends to be accepted by a group, you were accepted and so forth. And that's when many people get lost. And that's why the sisterhood in that time, it was very, very hard.
So how do we I'm thinking about my granddaughter. My granddaughter's 3, and how do we start working at breaking that down? Like, as sort of the older generation now, how do we start modeling that in a way so that, the young women coming up now, the 20 somethings, whatnot, like, I would love to believe that there's less of a sense of competition, that there's like, I mean, I know there is, but how can we model that? How can we support that? How can we,
I believe what
you know,
I believe what we can do it is celebrate being original. How would you do things
mm,
different
mhm,
than the magazines, the TV, because those are the ones that put the pressure and what kind of body
mhm,
you have to have, or
mhm,
how you got to dress, or what brands you have to buy, and that's just
mhm.
marketing.
It is.
And the moment we tell them, how would you do this different than anyone
Mhm.
else, then we're celebrating in a way being original, so they don't have to go in competition.
It was
Think
a
so.
few years ago now, probably about 6 or 7 years ago now. It's been a while. But there was one New Year's Eve that I wanted to create a different kind of New Year's resolution. Like, instead of like, oh, I want to lose 10 pounds, or I want to blah, 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 or I want to, I wanted to create something different. And I said to myself, anytime I think something positive about someone, I'm going to say it out loud. Like, I'm going to compliment people. Like, if I think it and I'm in vicinity, I'm going to say it. And I remember the first couple times doing it, right? Very clearly. I remember, noticing different people, and I'd be like, oh, I really like your boots, or I really like how your hair's done, or I really like, and lots of times people just gave me this weird, like, sort of double take look, like, what? Me? What? And then every time the smile would erupt, right? And usually I just say it and keep going, because it wasn't meant to be a big conversation. It was just like, hey, I thought it, so I'm gonna say it out loud to you. Um, there was one time where the one that was really like struck me was this older lady. She was in the grocery store, and she was very, I could tell that she had like really put thought into her outfit, and she looked just lovely. It was a Sunday. And I told her, I said, you look very nice today. Your outfit is very beautiful. And she started to cry, and she told me that she hadn't gone to church, or she hadn't really gone out much since her husband had passed away. And this was her first day trying to like decide, okay, it's time for me to get back to the land of the living. And so she chose this outfit to try and like, you know, boost herself up. And I just thought, I could have easily have walked by, not said anything, not, but I think by when you think something positive about someone, just say it, and then I think those little boosts, just those tiny little boosts are just enough. You never know what that person's going through. Maybe they're feeling a bit insecure, and when you say, hey, I love your necklace, or I love, you look really great today, or I love your smile, or blah blah blah, that might just be the one little thing they need to kind of boost them past that insecurity, or that competition, or that, like, maybe, because now I've made it a practice. I just do it all the time. But I do remember clearly the reactions at the beginning, where people kind of would do this, and they still sometimes double take, and sometimes they still, but now I don't really think about it. I don't really notice. I just say it. But I think maybe we need a bit more of that, especially from women, women supporting women, and
Yeah.
taking those moments to compliment, and tell each other what we love about each other, what we support about each other, and what we value. um
Because it is very different when it comes from a man. It is very different energy and is very different intentions. Not all the time. I want to clarify that.
yeah,
But
it's
but it's
hard because, it's funny, because that said, I actually had the experience where I realized, because there was a waiter that I was in Banff, and a waiter came, and he had really blue eyes, and he was wearing a tie that matched his eyes. And I remember thinking, that looks really nice. Like, it's a really nice combination. And because of my habit of, saying it when I think it, because it was a man, I stopped myself, and I thought, and I had to think, okay, why am I stopping myself? It's because I didn't want him to think I was hitting on him, and I thought, how unfortunate that I can't compliment somebody without me worrying that they're thinking I'm hitting on them. So I did. I ended up telling him, you know what? I love the color of your tie with your eyes. It really matches. And I had this moment of, please don't let him think I'm hitting on him, like, and he said, thank you so much for saying that. And then we ended up having a conversation, and I said, I hesitated saying it because I didn't want you to think I was hitting on you, or, and I just, am in this habit. I try to say, if I think it, I say it. and he appreciated it. And so I think it's tricky, you know, but you're right that female energy of when a woman compliments another woman and boosts them up,
Mhm.
there's no possibility of us misinterpreting that as ulterior motives. And I'm not saying that men have ulterior motives whenever they're complimenting. I'm sure a lot of them don't. But it's easy to misconstrue. And it's easy then not even to misconstrue in terms of that, but to negate it, to say, well, they're just saying that because they want this, or they're just saying that because, you know, whereas I think sometimes when it comes from a woman and it's genuine, right, then you can't negate it as easily, which is sad. It's sad that we negate it, but you know, I think we're less likely to negate it as having some other.
Because we still all program at the same time. So the men is
Mhm.
still programmed as females. But the man has the mentality that when they say it, it's because they're hitting someone.
Mm.
They're not all the time. I'm not gonna say never because that would be a lie. But the majority of the time when they say a woman, oh, you look very pretty, it goes with a different intention that actually what it is. You just look pretty.
Yeah, you can feel the intention. Yeah. And you're right. I wish it was different. I would love to say, well, no, that's not true. But you know what? It is, you know, most of the time when you get that kind of attention, it is, which is unfortunate. We should be able to just support and be like, hey, you're beautiful and
That's
have it not mean anything, right?
and that's just the physical part when we're saying, oh, your boots or you look pretty or whatever looks pretty, etc. But now we go to the emotional part.
Yes.
The emotional part, we still so programmed. And I caught myself today twice saying to someone, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. And the second time I say it today, I was like, wait. No, you know what? I wanna cry. I was like, and they look at me like, really? Like, yeah, really. It's like I'm not trying. It's like, why I have to say as part of the program, so how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. And you, that's the norm of the society, how you should
Or I'm busy.
always answer. But when it is not true to female, why not to say, you know what? I'm having a shitty day. I feel sad. I am weary. I am hungry. I am whatever
Mhm.
emotion or feeling that you're having in that moment, not to say it.
You know what? And that goes back to that sisterhood, because I can say honestly right now that my group, my friend base, you know, when they ask me how I'm doing, I feel like I can be honest. You know, I've had a lot of people check in on me recently because of the surgery. And I feel like I can be honest and say, you know what, I'm having a really down day today because I hate feeling so dependent, you know. Um, and I think it also depends on kind of who you surround yourself with. And it's also, like you said before, the modeling, right? I think we have to normalize that it's okay to not be happy all the time. It's okay to, you know, be real. And especially I think about new moms, right? And new moms are supposed to be like, la la la, everything's great. I love, you know, when really being a new mom is really hard. And, you know, I think we need to normalize sometimes to say like, hey, I'm struggling a bit, like, you know, and it's not a bad thing to struggle a bit, you know, and um, you know, there's a certain degree of positivity in that, you know, people you know want to be lifted, and so if you're constantly complaining, that can be a problem. But I think there's an honesty piece there that we need to normalize a little bit, and it doesn't have to be wallowing. It can just be a, yeah, I'm having kind of an off day today. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, you know, and it doesn't even have to be more than that, right? Like it can just, but it's normalizing some of those conversations.
A long time ago, I did read the book, The Men Are from Mars and the Women Are from
Yeah.
Venus. I don't know if anyone have read it, but I recommended you to read it.
I do.
Sounds
I actually just had a
cheesy.
conversation with my daughter about that book. Yeah.
It sounds cheesy, but it was very on point, and it has to do with this point precisely because females, like in the book says, and it is true, when we are talking about how was our day or how we're feeling, we just want to be listened. We don't need to fix anything. We just
We don't
need to
want
be listened.
advice. We just want to say it.
And the
We hear
men are
ourselves say it, we process it, it's done.
yes, exactly. We can, it's completely done. But in the male, when we're talking with the males are trying to fix it. That's what the book talks about. And I believe it is really on point. That's why I believe at our age that we're not trying to flirt, we're not trying to have nothing with a male friend. So we can't tell them, hey, I have this problem, because they're going to try to fix it.
And I think it's also, and that goes back to the sisterhood part, because also in that book, and yeah, some of that book is kind of cheesy, but there are some points to it. And the point that I was bringing up with my daughter the other day was that she was concerned because her boyfriend, she's young, she's 23, and her boyfriend was, dealing with some stuff. And so he kind of just got quiet and was taking his time to process. And she was like, I feel like I want to, and I was like, I remember in that book, when I read that, it's like women need to talk it out. Most women, okay, I'm generalizing, stereotyping,
Yes.
but most women need to check it out. And that's why you need to have that sisterhood. So you can talk it out, hear yourself talk, hear the ideas form, allow you to know what kind of action to take. Whereas I think men tend to cave a little bit. They go, they process, and then they come back, right? And so
They're trying to
I
fix
think,
it.
right? And so I think, again, that sisterhood is so important, to have people that you talk to, have people that you just voice your stuff. Unfortunately, I think some women get into like a one up, like as soon as you're like, oh, I'm having problems with this, it turns into, oh yeah, my kids are like that too, blah, blah, blah. And it turns into like kind of a, who has it worse? So you want to be careful that we don't enter into that kind of, mentality, but there is definitely a need. We need to talk it out. That's part of, I think someone else might disagree, but I believe I know it's part of my genetic makeup. When I'm having a problem about something, I need to talk it out, but I'm selective with who I talk it out to, right? Because you don't want it to come back and bite you. You don't want, when your opinions change. I have a very good friend who will, sometimes complain about her partner, but she complains to me because I'm safe. I'm not going to judge her partner. I like her partner, and so, yes, I know that there, can be ups and downs and whatnot, but she can vent to me and I'm not going to hold it against him. I'm not going to be like, oh, and I think you have to be careful to find safe people to talk to so that it doesn't affect later on. But it's important that you find that sisterhood of people to talk talk it out so that you can process.
Yes. And people that if they're competing in the competition and they're trying to in the envy, and it is going to be very hard to actually make a sisterhood with them until they decide to change, because they're still playing the game of our ancestors, that it was not actually a very healthy, let's put it like that. And yes, how would you use the same information for your therapies that you're doing? Because now I know that you're a neurolinguistic programmer, NLP, and congratulations for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of it is how we talk to ourselves, right? I've had a couple readings where, well, there's one in particular. When I do readings, I don't remember much afterwards because I'm channeling the information. So, but there's certain key things that sometimes I'll remember. So I don't remember the whole situation, but I do remember that this one woman I was working with, she was a bit afraid of going into a new situation because she was afraid it would be repeating patterns. It would be going back to who she was before, that she didn't want to be that anymore. And so in working with her and whatnot, I realized she has already done so much growing, so she could never be that anymore. So using NLP, I created a meditation for her to kind of allow herself to kind of experience her own magnitude, her own power, and then superimpose it with kind of situation from the past and just see how small that other one was versus now, and then until it eventually, squishes out and becomes blurry and just isn't part of it anymore. Just that sort of meditation, an NLP meditation almost to kind of change the talk, change what we say to ourselves. And I think, that goes with that competition stuff. If we can start stepping into our magnitude and really accepting our flaws and our foibles and our idiosyncrasies and our quirkiness and the different things that make us us, but celebrating all the amazing things that make us us, and focusing more on those parts, managing the other parts. I think that's the key, and the more we can kind of incorporate that through how we speak to ourselves,
Yes.
that self-talk is huge. That comes up a lot. In fact, I've never really thought about creating a course. I am an educator. I'm a teacher by trade. And I've often thought if I was to create a course, that's something that I would like to do, because that comes up a lot in readings, is in the throat chakra, how we talk to ourselves and the words we use and where it comes from and where those words come from and whether we're honest with ourselves, and we can be so hard on ourselves, and it's not helpful. So yeah, something to think about.
I do agree. As a humanity, we tend to judge everybody, but not only judging everybody, we're judging ourselves. We did the mistakes that we all did. There is no one that can say, I have never done a mistake. Of course, everybody have done mistakes. And in the moment when we did the mistakes, it was with information that we had in that moment. That is
right.
how years later, you're going to say, oh, I have more information. I would never do that, but you did it. That's
You didn't.
You are.
And that's why, absolutely, Monica, that's such an important point, because there's so many times, even in my own life, I look back, I was like, why did I do that? There was a reason I did that, and when I really reflect on it, it was either learning or there was a reason. I had a deficit in this. And so I got attracted to that because that fulfilled that. And then I was like, oh, but there's this. And so it's all about that learning. That's another thing that often comes up in readings, like when we're talking about the third eye and people are like, not wanting to trust their intuition because the last time they trusted their intuition, it ended up being a bad situation. And it's like, is there really a bad or good situation? Or is it that's exactly what your soul needed to learn? So if your soul, I know my soul's here to figure out boundaries. So I keep managing to find myself in situations where I have to learn to set boundaries. And my gut, my intuition leads me into these situations. And I think, how did I get myself here? Well, because I've told my soul has said, I want to learn about boundaries. So it's like, oh, here's a perfect opportunity for her to learn about boundaries. And so I'm drawn to it, right? And then I'm like, oh, here we are. Okay. But I'm finding the more that I practice and the more I kind of actually internalize that learning, the less I'm finding myself in that situation. So is it that my intuition is not guiding me there anymore? Or is it that I don't need that lesson as much anymore? So now I'm going to be finding other lessons. To be honest, my intuition is now guiding me into lessons where I need to be dependent and ask for help from other people. And that's not one that I'm comfortable with right now. And that's where I seem to be.
The universe is going to always give us what we ask for.
Right.
And if you don't want it anymore because you already got the lesson and you don't want to continue repeating it, well, that's something that then you have to actually say to your spirit or the universe, I'm done. Okay, I learned my lesson.
I'm done with that lesson. I got it. I got that now, and I might get, I think I got thrown a couple more just to see if I had really got it, but we evolve. And so I think that's a big thing, is it's one thing to, our intuition's just going to lead us into only no, I think that our intuition leads us into the very scenarios that we need. And if we reframe for ourselves that it's learning as opposed to failure, then we can also look and not judge others, and that goes back to that sisterhood. And that, well, I just thought of when I was pregnant with my son, I was working in a very impoverished area as a teacher. And I found myself judging the mothers of a lot of the families. And I had to take myself out of that situation because I thought, these moms don't need my judgment right now. What they need is my support. But because I was pregnant and I was like super hormonal and like all like mommy head, I wasn't able to take that step out. So I removed myself from that situation. And I reflect on that sometimes because people that are struggling, they don't need our judgment. They need our support. They need our help. They need our guidance. They need our wisdom. They don't need our judgment. Everybody is doing the best they can with what they have. And until you have walked a mile in their shoes, you can't judge. And so you can have, the gorgeous supermodel who's actually insecure and you're thinking like, how, or you can have the businesswoman who's all together, who's actually going home and crying because, and until you've walked a mile in someone's shoes, you can't judge. And so I think that aspect alone can promote that sisterhood. Everyone is trying to do the best they can with what they have. And, how can I support you? What can I do? How can I support you? That's what we need to do. And from a place of kindness, not judgment.
Yes, we need compassion for everybody, compassion for ourselves, and compassion for others. And that's very important. And Nancy, you need to let us know when you're going to be teaching that class so we can help you promote it. We can have another soul talk with you so that you can promote it.
I've been thinking about it. Yeah, maybe while I'm on leave here, I'm not at work while I'm recovering from my surgery. Maybe I'll put some time into putting my education degree to work and creating a course on how we talk to ourselves.
It is fun. It is fun putting classes together, and it's like, but I can teach. How I'm going to teach it, and the creativity just start running in the artists in ourselves, and it just come amazing masterpieces in there.
Well, I'll maybe pick your brain on that because I've created tons of courses and workshops for education matters, teaching teachers how to teach and, teaching pre-service teachers. And I teach for our teachers organization. So I teach, teachers all over, on education matters, but I've never spent the time to put together teaching from that soul place. And maybe I need to marry the two and,
yes,
and put that together.
Some tips and so forth, how I do it.
Okay.
It makes you feel good when you can help someone. It is
absolutely
a very satisfying sensation.
Well, and it seems to be a common theme. There are a couple things that come up in my readings that are like everyone's reading is 100% unique and it's 100% what's relevant to that person at that moment in time. Yes. But it's amazing how often that message comes up in different ways, in different capacities, and different stuff. But that particular we the way we talk to ourselves is very, it's definitely something that needs to be considered and worked on and maybe overcome to some degree.
Yes. Beautiful. Do you have something else that would you like to add before we close?
Just tapping in to see if there's any like collective wisdom, because one of the things I do collective readings for the week. And where I say, if human consciousness is one person, what's the main message for right now? So in terms of sisterhood, what's the main message for right now? So what I'm hearing is to find your people. Like I said before, find your people. Find the people that you feel inspired and empowered by. And I also just heard, Kate, this is a message. This is a clear one, is that don't be afraid to make that connection, that the people I'm getting shivers from this one, the very people that you want to associate with and be a part of, you're drawn to them for a reason. It's because you're resonating on that same frequency. Don't be afraid to make that connection. Don't be afraid to say, hey, you know what? I've always wanted to get to know you. Do you want to go for coffee sometime? Or do you want to whatever, and the worst they can say is no, or they might be busy, or they might be going, yes, I've always wanted to connect with that person too. So don't be afraid to take that step to make those connections. Don't be afraid to be the person that does the initiation, because they could just be waiting as well, thinking, boy, I'd love to have some new people to hang out with, and so don't be afraid to be the one to take that chance.
That is beautiful. Thank you.
That's what I heard. So it wasn't my knowledge. That was,
yes,
and that was what I was given. That was what I was given to tell. So, and I agree.
Yes, I do agree too. Well, Nancy, we're going to be putting your the information on Nancy is going to be in this video, so like that you can contact her for any of the soul readings she do. And also now she's NLP, and you want a therapy with her, or you need to try also her tea reading that she did one for me, and it was amazing. It was really on point. So you need to try that one too.
And it works remotely. I don't have to be, I mean, I did it for you.
I mean,
I know people are often like, how do you do a tea leaf reading remotely? But we talk, I drink the tea for you, and it works just as well. It's no different than if I'm in front of somebody. So yeah.
And I am in South Texas and she's in Canada. So, and I promise it do work. Thank
Wonderful.
you, Nancy.
Thank you so much, Monica. And
so much.
I really love the work that you do. You did a reading for me and it was very helpful, especially just before this surgery. We did some clearing work and it was really relevant. And on that note, as they removed everything, I felt that energetic lightning, that letting go of some of those residual things that I was holding on to that way, that we talked about in the reading you gave for me. So I feel like that's gone now. And I feel like once I'm actually healed, I feel like I'll be a stronger, lighter, brighter person. So you're very on point with the work you did with me too. So I strongly recommend a reading with Monica as well.
Thank you, Nancy. Take care, beautiful, and be safe.
Yes,
And
you too. Thank you so much.
And thank you, everybody, for being in Soul Talk. And this is Monica Ramirez, Warrior of Love. Thank you, Nancy.
It's so beautiful, you and me. We meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free. Sometimes you need to go and take a step back to see the truth around you. From a distance you can tell. You and me were meant to be